It's the end of Season 3 of FAS TV, and we've taken a look back at some of the highlights from our farmers and crofters, sharing their experiences with Agri-Environment Climate Schemes, cover crops, corncrakes and bats to enhance biodiversity across Scotland.
For many years, the fields were ploughed up to every single margin possible, and it was all about concentrating on agricultural production. And in the last few years, we have been very lucky to be involved in the Agri-Environment Climate Scheme, which has allowed us to do things which we could only have imagined. On the estate, we consider it extremely important that using public money wisely and responsibly can produce results. I think that for quite a few centuries, man has been running the show when it comes to nature, and certainly with arable farming, there have been a lot of changes in nature, not necessarily for the good. I think for us to be able to allow nature to reset has been one of the main attractions of going into the Agri-Environment Climate Scheme. We have a business here which is financially stable, and it's very, very nice to be able to put some of the profits from the business back into the biodiversity of the state. I think it's incredibly important also from a political point of view going forward that we are seen to be engaging with the future. All of the country has to look to going back to nature to a certain extent. I think from a political point of view, governments are going to be looking at farms that are concentrating on biodiversity as well as food production.
The good thing about having a mix of wildflowers like this is they all flower at slightly different times, so they provide a sort of continuous source of nectar and pollen for pollinating insects and other invertebrates throughout the summer. Well, I think if you're going to successfully implement an Agri-Environment Climate Scheme, you have to kind of be quite committed to it and take care, as ELCO have here, with the creation of the habitats. You need to commit to actually active management. In terms of planning, the Agri-Environment Scheme, you need to look at what you've already got on the farm and try and build on that. And also in terms of the options that you choose, try to choose ones that complement each other and create habitat networks across the farm. So if farmers watching this are interested in exploring the possibilities for Agri-Environment schemes, they might want to consider getting a Farm Advisory Service ILMP Specialist Advice Plan, which can look at what the potential is on their farm before they commit to that sort of scheme. And all that information is available on the Farm Advisory Service website.
So when I took over the business, this farm had a high number of cows, very intensive. We had over 120 cows, and then all the fields associated with it have enough silage and straw, and there's a lot of work. You were working every hour that you were given with not much life, and having had a career outside of farming, it kind of gives you a different light on life and how it should be. So when I had the chance to make a change, I decided to make a change. So one of the changes going, after having been convinced to give the green cover and min-till and no-till a try, is that far less ploughing, in fact very minimal ploughing. I still do a small amount because it's still a work in progress, and especially with potatoes in the rotation, you have to plough. There's no option in that. But I want to minimise the amount of ploughing and the cost involved with that. For kind of rough figures, from when I started this, the amount of money I saved in diesel alone paid for the the slight yield drop that I had in the first year. If you don't have failures, you never learn from anything. No, I'm always open for trying new things, trying new crops. What I'd say to farmers thinking about making this change to this style of farming, first off, it's great that you're thinking about it because you have the right mindset already, because you're willing to try. If you go into this thinking it'll never work, it will definitely not work at all. And you continue on with what you're doing. And you should give it a try, because you can't write it off. You can't just say it won't work, because how do you know it won't work? Have you done it? Have you tried a 5-acre plot for say 5 years in a row and a cropping rotation on that 5 acres to see if it does work? And until then, you don't really have a leg to stand on whether it works or won't work. That said, what works here is totally different than what would work even somewhere else in this county and further south. My top tips for someone who's made the changes or decided to go down this route: if it's your first year, maybe don't be too disappointed if you have a yield decrease. It's just that your soils are changing. Don't try it for 1 year and think, oh, this is rubbish, I'm going back to the other way, or to how you used to establish your crop. And don't listen to what other people think. A lot of people will tell you, oh, it'll never work. Well, they're probably the ones that will never try. So, and not give it a fair trial either. So, yeah, you got to stand your ground and go for it.
The benefits of what Neil is doing is to improve soil structure. He is also trying to improve, with a crop like this, trying to improve the beneficials on the farm, and is also trying to have that middle ground between trying to produce a monoculture crop and embracing the environment around him. What people can expect moving into this system is, firstly, they need to look at their soil structure before they move into this system to check whether their soil is adequate for that, adequate organic matter, adequate pH, adequate levels of P and K. They need to then start to think in a slightly different way, and using cover crops to help with preparing the soil for the crop is imperative. And they also have to move away from using too many cultivations to prepare the ground, and the cover crop will be helping the system in that rotation. Things to be wary of is one of the main things is grass weeds. So if there isn't ground cover and the crop isn't thick enough, then we can see an ingress of annumedagrass. So we need to think about stale seed beds, and we also need to think about pre-emergence to keep that annumedagrass at bay. And then we also need to try and make sure that the crop is thick enough to be able to compete if that meadowgrass does come back. Also, reducing the amount of traffic across the field is a thing to be wary of. When you're in a zero-till or min-till system, you don't have as much of an opportunity to remove that compaction. And so running your traffic down as little a channels as possible, then you can alleviate the need for removing that compaction.
Well, the connection between midges and bats. So around the world, bats eat all kinds of things, from fruit and flowers to frogs and fish. But most species of bats, 70% of species, including all the species we find in the UK, feed on insects. So bats in Scotland, like I say, they eat insects, and they have different preferences, the different species. Some like to eat moths or beetles or spiders, Our smallest and most common bats love midges. Well, crofting is fantastic for bats. The small-scale, low-intensity nature of how crofts are managed has always contributed positively to the landscape and ecology. Different species of bat have slightly different preferences when it comes to roost, so if you're considering installing a bat box, you should think about which species it is you'd like to attract. It's really important to remember, well, it can take a while for bats to move into your bat box, but once a bat has moved in, it's really important to remember that only someone with a licence is actually allowed to open that box, as bats and their roosts are protected by law. Even people with reservations about bats tend to be persuaded to appreciate them once they've learned that bats are eating all the midges. So having a bat box in your self-catering accommodation can be a great addition and offer your guests something fun to do on a nice summer's evening. So yeah, great idea.
If there are any crofters or farmers who have corncrakes on their land, then I suppose the first thing you might want to do is contact your local SAC office or the RSPB and for any advice that we might be able to give you on how to promote their chances of breeding successfully. If you have a nice healthy bit of grassland and you're in a corncrake area, never assume you don't have birds in it, because they disperse later on in the season. Even though they might not have nested in your field, the young, the adults after they're molted, could be using your grassland. So remember the wildlife friendly mowing. The corncrakes are birds that rely on agriculture, and so active crofting is key to their survival. The other thing you're really brilliant at is the corncrake friendly mowing, the wildlife friendly mowing from the inside out. Has that created a lot of work for you?
The mowing, yes, created a lot more time when you're running with the weather on Skye here, but if it helps save the corncrakes and keep more of them coming to Skye, it'll be worth it. When I hear a corncrake, I automatically pull my phone out of my pocket right away, get on to record, and if it's a video or voice, whatever I can get at the quickest moment, it's on there, and then I send it over to Sheila right away so she can get an identification of that corncrake. Watch how you're recording it with sound in the background, and if there's loads of other birds around you, it doesn't record very good. You've got to have a clear, no birds basically, in the background.
Well, it is proven by other people than just me that within the first 50 yards of a hedge, that the yield, it will be up by 10%. Equally, the pesticide use can be down by as much as 30%. The benefits to livestock are very simple. Where they have the old-fashioned phrase in Scotland, "Bield is yield," that they give great shelter to young lambs and all sheep, for that matter, when the weather is bad. And it's no different from a dyke or a wood. The wildlife will thrive for a variety of reasons. First of all, there'll be a very much greater density of food in that area. The thickness of the hedge, which is the absolute essence of why you lay a hedge, will provide great sanctuary from wildlife, stopping raptors and ground vermin from getting in there. There will be a large amount of nests in a smaller area than on a regular hedge, and all round it is a much safer place for wildlife to be in.